Some transfers break records, some break hearts, and some break entire football clubs. This is the story of the biggest letdowns, the most overhyped talents, and the transfers that cost millions but delivered next to nothing. What makes a transfer truly flop? The price, the injuries, or the illusion we all bought into? Welcome to football's most expensive mistakes. Sure, these mistakes cost hundreds of millions, but you know what doesn't cost a thing? Subscribing to this channel. It's just one click for you, but it genuinely means a lot to us. Let's keep going. A creativity that turned every match into a freestyle show, silky ankles that snapped defenders in half, sometimes even left them begging on the pitch, and a skill set so unreal it made this game, which we're mostly here to enjoy, feel like something from another planet. All good, but that was Brazil. The real question that started circling the moment he landed in Europe was this: could this showman kid actually become a team player at a place like Barcelona? Starting from his second season, Neymar pulled it off. He still adored dribbling, but now it had finesse. He learned to play for the team, didn't hog the spotlight, and didn't complain about being the number 2. This evolution, blended with Suarez's rise and Messi's relentless brilliance, created the most dangerous attacking trio football had ever seen: MSN. In the 2014 to 2015 season, this trio won absolutely everything, and they did it with numbers that felt straight out of a video game: 122 goals and 61 assists. A record for an attacking trio that still looks untouchable today. Then came the summer of 2017, a transfer window so absurd it could have been written by Netflix. PSG, backed by deep-pocketed Middle Eastern investors, weren't just shopping. They were looking for the best player money could buy. Messi or Ronaldo, they both have no price tag at that time. But sitting at number 3 was a Brazilian idol with over 100 million Instagram followers. And if they dropped 222 million euros, they wouldn't even have to talk to Barcelona. So they did. They bought the most expensive player money could legally buy: 173 games, 118 goals, 79 assists. That kind of output doesn't belong on a list like this, right? I mean, I'm the one making this list. Am I secretly a Neymar hater? Here's the thing. During his PSG stint, Neymar picked up 18 different injuries. Sure, he played 173 times, but he also missed 144 matches. Let me put it like this: you buy the best car money can buy. When it runs, it's insane, but half the time, it won't even start. You take it to the garage 18 times. It sits unused for 144 days. Now, to all the used car experts out there, did you get scammed? However much you did, PSG did too. Then again, maybe trophies weren't even the point. Maybe PSG just wanted a flashy ride to park outside their house, a magnet to make the whole world look their way. Another signature from that famous summer of 2017. To put it simply, when rumors began swirling about Neymar's possible move to Paris, Barcelona's board reacted with a curious calm. Maybe they didn't believe Neymar actually wanted to leave. Maybe they just couldn't imagine Paris Saint-Germain casually dropping 222 million euros. But when the deal went through, panic mode set in. Suddenly, they had a mountain of cash in the bank and a massive Neymar-shaped hole in the squad. In hindsight, maybe Barcelona shouldn't have tried to replace him at all. Maybe a short-term loan deal would have been smarter. But instead, they rushed into decisions, and those rushed decisions turned into layered mistakes. One of them, paying a whopping 135 million euros for Ousmane Dembele, someone they might have signed for half that amount under normal circumstances. Borussia Dortmund, of course, smelled the Neymar money and played their hand accordingly, squeezing every last cent out of the deal. Dembele, just 20 at the time, showed flashes of brilliance reminiscent of his Dortmund days. But that price tag was always too heavy to carry. And then came the injuries. His development didn't just stall, it reversed. Over 5 seasons, he missed a total of 140 matches due to injury. And by the end, he was no longer seen as the future of Barcelona, but as one of the biggest transfer flops in club history. Eventually, he was sold to Paris Saint-Germain, ironically, for a fresh start. A chance at rebirth in the very city that had once set off this whole domino effect. And now, we reach the final ripple of that 222 million euro shockwave, Philippe Coutinho. At just 16, Coutinho signed a deal with Inter and set foot in Italy the very day he turned 18. But Inter, going through a phase of chaotic sporting mismanagement, never really gave him the right environment to thrive. Despite his obvious talent, his skinny frame was no match for the bruising defenders of Serie A. He vanished in the cracks. In 2012, he was loaned to Espanyol. By January 2013, he was on his way to England. At Liverpool, everything changed. In just 2 seasons, he transformed both physically and mentally. And when Jurgen took over, Coutinho hit his ceiling. Already gifted on the ball, he added elite-level playmaking to his skill set and even started scoring regularly. Coutinho was now a bona fide superstar. And Barcelona? They saw him as the perfect replacement for his childhood friend Neymar. Even Coutinho himself was all in on the move, burning bridges with Liverpool to force his way out. The transfer was sealed in January 2018 for a jaw-dropping €135 million, but what followed was nothing short of a disaster. He played 106 games in a Barcelona shirt, scoring just 25 goals. For a regular forward, that might be serviceable. For someone worth €125 million? Not even close. He was loaned out, first to Bayern, then to Aston Villa, and eventually he was sold for a mere €20 million. In total, Barcelona paid €270 million for this duo, Dembele and Coutinho, and clawed back just €65 million. A brutal equation, a painful lesson. Real Madrid has always gone after the very best in the world, or at the very least, those with the potential to become the best. Yes, it's a club with immense financial power, but most of the time, it gets its money's worth. Eden Hazard was one of the rare exceptions. With 352 appearances, 110 goals, and 88 assists at Chelsea, no one questioned Real Madrid's decision. Once again, they had signed one of the best in his position, but from the moment Hazard joined Madrid's pre-season camp, something felt off. He showed up carrying an extra 7 or 8 kilos. This was his childhood dream. Playing for Real Madrid had always been the end goal, but judging by how he acted after signing, it's as if he thought he'd already made it. Job done. It took months just to get back into shape. At Chelsea, Hazard had built a reputation for freakish consistency. He seemed to possess the endurance of an African or South American athlete, barely ever injured. In Madrid, that aura vanished. Injuries became the new normal. 4 years in Spain, just 76 appearances, not even 10 goals. Hazard's premature retirement at 32, fueled by this sense of having already arrived, hurts even more when compared to an old friend still clawing for greatness at 40. And maybe that's the clearest way to grasp the frustration Madridistas feel. Counting the medals you've won is easy. What defines greatness is staying obsessed with the ones you didn't. A textbook case of wasted potential. In 2016, Paul Pogba became the most expensive footballer in history at just 23 years old. Manchester United paid €105 million to bring him back from Juventus, expecting a powerhouse midfielder who could dominate both ends of the pitch. And on paper, he was exactly that. A 1-meter-90 giant, athletic, strong as a bull, but with the feet of a playmaker. He could shoot from distance, ping long passes with laser precision, and carry the ball like few others could. But Juventus had masked his flaws. When you're playing with Pirlo behind you, Vidal and Marchisio beside you, Bonucci and Chiellini behind you, and Buffon cleaning up the rest, your job becomes a lot easier. In that kind of structure, Pogba could focus on his flair and leave the heavy lifting to the leaders around him. Back at United, the expectations were different. He wasn't just a player anymore. He was the star, the face of the rebuild, the guy who was supposed to lead by example. But Pogba was never built for responsibility. He didn't want to lead. He wanted the spotlight, and he got it. Not for his football, though, but for his followers, his haircuts, his Instagram dances. And to be fair, he crushed it in that department. On the pitch, not so much. His performances were inconsistent at best, frustrating at worst. Over time, his physical sharpness faded. Injuries piled up. He became unreliable, yet somehow always in the news for everything except football. 6 seasons at United. And what do people remember? The spats with Mourinho, the rotating hairstyles, the TikTok-worthy celebrations. In the summer of 2022, Pogba walked out the same way he came in, without bringing the club a single cent in return, only this time with a lot more questions than answers. You know how some transfers already feel like a bust the day the ink dries? Jack Grealish was one of those. A product of Aston Villa's academy, Grealish spent 8 steady years climbing the ladder in the first team. He earned a starting spot, became club captain, and eventually made it to the national team. By 2020, he was one of the most talked about English players in the Premier League. When it came to metrics like shot creation and goal involvement, he was always near the top. He was also, famously, the most fouled player in the league. And maybe that's where the Jack Grealish dilemma begins. At Villa, he was everything. Every ball went through him. Every decision had his fingerprints on it. But maybe we should have been more cautious about those shiny stats, because when you touch the ball that much, of course your numbers inflate. Beyond that, Grealish was an image. The slick hair, the low-cut socks, the flashy moves. He was the most stylish English footballer since David Beckham. Born in Birmingham and with a haircut straight out of Peaky Blinders, fans nicknamed him Peaky Jack. Then came the summer of 2021. Manchester City dropped a record-breaking €117 million to sign him, instantly making him the most expensive English player in history. And from that very moment, the glitter started to fade. At Villa, he was used to calling the shots. At City, under Pep, a man who treats possession like a sacred ritual, those freedoms simply didn't exist. Slowly, Grealish began to lose confidence. He stopped taking risks. He became ordinary. Minutes dried up. He slipped out of the rotation. He finished the entire last season with just 1 goal and 1 assist. He wasn't even named in the Club World Cup squad. Forget the transfer fee. Grealish is now a player on a bloated contract worth over £15 million per year, surrounded by rumours of alcohol problems and becoming the kind of asset even Manchester City might struggle to offload. Here's the kind of transfer that looks like a slam dunk on paper and crashes spectacularly once the boots hit the grass. Romelu Lukaku had just fired Inter to their first league title in 11 years, netting 24 goals in the 2021 Serie A season. Everyone agreed. He was one of the top 5 or 6 strikers in the world. Chelsea, fresh off their Champions League triumph, decided to bring him back to London for €113 million. The move was supposed to make an already strong team even scarier, but Lukaku's second Chelsea stint was shaky from the very beginning. The team's playing style didn't suit him, and before the season had even properly settled in, he made that fact publicly known. In an interview with Sky Italia, he flat out said, "I'm not happy here. I miss Inter." Just like that, he alienated the fans, the coach, and the entire dressing room in one go. From that moment, the clock started ticking on his Chelsea redemption arc. He needed to fight for his spot, but he didn't have the energy or the mindset. Lukaku's always been someone whose fitness requires close attention, and in Tuchel's system, built on pace, movement, and fluidity, he looked sluggish, static, and out of sync. His minutes dropped, his body fat climbed, his finishing went blunt, his confidence bottomed out. By the end of the season, he had scored just 8 Premier League goals. Lukaku's sudden collapse wasn't just a sporting disaster, it was a financial one too. That €113 million investment quickly became one of Chelsea's most painful regrets. After 2 separate loan spells at Inter and Roma, Chelsea finally cut their losses and sold him to Napoli for €30 million, a classic case of better late than never. It's a tradition in English media and fandom. Any English player who shows a glimpse of form is immediately hyped beyond reason. Every season, 1 or 2 players are hailed as the future saviours of English football. For Harry Maguire, all it took was 2 above-average seasons at Leicester and 7 decent games at the 2018 World Cup. That was enough to send the hype machine into overdrive. To be fair, Maguire is strong in the air and not too shabby at playing out from the back. But let's be honest, you can find dozens of centre-backs with the same traits who are faster, more athletic, and less stiff on the turn. Maguire, to put it bluntly, is a heavy-footed defender who doesn't exactly glide. Is he a bad player? No, not at all. But when you start talking about the most expensive centre-back in football history, well, that's where we need to pump the brakes. That title doesn't leave much room for flaws. Manchester United had an obvious need at centre-back for several seasons. Combine that with Maguire's English passport, media overhype, and the transfer wizardry, read incompetence of Ed Woodward, and suddenly the price tag ballooned to absurd levels. Eventually, United paid €87 million. To his credit, Maguire didn't start terribly at Old Trafford, but let's not pretend he ever had a Virgil van Dijk type impact. That kind of transformational presence never came. Maybe expecting that was too much to begin with. But for that kind of money, people were expecting it. Years later, it's crystal clear Maguire was never going to live up to that price, and he didn't. To be fair, most of Manchester United's transfers in the last decade could make this list, but naturally, the most expensive ones are the hardest to ignore. Jadon Sancho, a Manchester City Academy graduate, took a bold step early in his career by moving to Borussia Dortmund, a club renowned for turning young potential into top-tier talent. And it worked. He got game time, developed fast, and bloomed into a Premier League-ready star within 4 years. Quick feet, a creative flair, and real scoring potential. Sancho became a hot commodity, and the club that pushed hardest for him was Manchester United. They got their man for €85 million, but the spark he had in the Bundesliga never quite made it across the channel. On top of that, things quickly got complicated with manager Erik ten Hag. The Dutch coach wasn't impressed with Sancho's attitude in training and wasn't shy about saying it publicly. Sancho, in response, took to social media to claim he was being made a scapegoat, essentially calling out his manager in front of the world. The situation escalated and ended with Sancho being exiled from the squad. Whether Ten Hag was right or wrong is a separate debate, but in this day and age, freezing out a player you paid €85 million for feels like a self-defeating move. The whole ordeal was a case study in poor crisis management, both from the coach and the club. In a desperate attempt to salvage something, United loaned him to Chelsea with a €30 million buy option. But even there, Sancho failed to ignite. The option wasn't triggered. It's now been 3 years since that record-breaking deal, and Sancho has neither improved nor found any consistency. United still don't know what to do with him. He's become exactly what no club ever wants, an €85 million question mark. Back to the blue half of London. Honestly, Chelsea's recent transfer moves have been so baffling that some have started to wonder if the club's being used for money laundering. This time, we're taking a 2-for-1 look at a pair of signings made just 4 months apart. Let's start with Wesley Faefana, a talented, modern defender whose career has been plagued by knee issues from day one. Leicester City knew this, and yet they took a calculated risk, spending around €25 million to sign him. That's what you call a measured gamble. What Chelsea did, on the other hand, was reckless. In August 2022, they paid €80 million for Faefana, despite the fact that he had only managed 14 appearances across his last 2 seasons at Leicester. Maybe they had a clean medical report, or maybe they were simply making a wildly optimistic guess about his recovery that had no basis in reality. Either way, the obvious happened. Faefana barely set foot on the pitch in a Chelsea shirt. By the age of 24, his knees were hanging by a thread. Over the last 3 seasons, he has missed a jaw-dropping 113 matches, and if there was any doubt before, there isn't now. Chelsea didn't just take a risk, they basically threw their money into a black hole. Roughly 4 months after Faefana, Chelsea returned to the transfer roulette wheel in the winter of 2023, this time placing their bet on Nicola Mudryk. And oh boy, this one's a story of its own. Maybe it's time we all learned to be a little more cautious with players who get hyped out of nowhere. Because even during his time at Shakhtar, Mudryk wasn't exactly setting the league on fire. A couple of flashy Champions League performances and suddenly chaos. At the time, Arsenal had made him a top priority. Mudryk himself was pretty clear about where he wanted to go, constantly posting cryptic love letters to Arsenal on social media, but then Chelsea's new owners showed up with their now famous brand of transfer aggression. Shakhtar saw an opportunity, pitted the 2 clubs against each other, and walked away laughing, with €70 million plus bonuses in the bank. And the result? Mudryk has shown very little to justify that kind of fee. His performances so far have been underwhelming at best, but things took a turn for the worse. During routine checks, banned substances were detected in his system. Since November 2024, he hasn't just missed games, he hasn't even trained with the team. With a contract running until 2031 and a potential 4-year ban looming, Chelsea may be stuck with a ghost on their payroll. This wasn't just a bad transfer, it's shaping up to be a full-blown catastrophe. Let's continue with Chelsea's biggest rival in the art of overpriced transfers, Manchester United. One of Erik ten Hag's pet projects at United has been building a full 11 out of Eredivisie alumni, and the most expensive piece of that puzzle, Antony. There are a few things that influence the price of a product. One is the buyer. If you're a club like Chelsea or Manchester United, forever ready to pay more than market value, you're going to get overcharged. Every single time. These clubs have a bad habit of inflating their own transfer targets. Another factor, the market itself. If you're negotiating with Ajax, a club famous not only for developing talent but for selling it at top dollar, be prepared to start high. And if the player also happens to have a Brazil cap or two under his belt, oh, forget it. Add another premium. Put all that together, and even someone like Antony, who hadn't truly proven himself yet, ends up with a €95 million price tag. It was clear from day one that the fee didn't make sense, but Antony's problems on the pitch ran deeper than just the pressure of that massive number. The Brazilian winger points to personal issues. In interviews and on social media, he's spoken about family struggles and emotional chaos off the pitch that, he claims, have taken a toll on his performance. At one point, he even admitted to completely losing focus during matches due to his mental state. I mean, it's not like he was going to say, "Yeah, I'm just not that good," right? Jokes aside, his short loan spell at Real Betis did show a glimpse of improvement, but let's be honest, living up to a €95 million price tag still feels about as likely as a snowstorm in Rio. Like Real Madrid, Liverpool is one of those rare clubs that doesn't miss often in the transfer market. Especially under Klopp, they've built a reputation for targeting players who perfectly fit their high-octane gegenpressing style, often shopping at places like RB Leipzig and Salzburg. But even the best get it wrong sometimes. And for Liverpool, the biggest misfire might just be Naby Keita. In the summer of 2018, they spent €60 million believing they were signing a quick, energetic pressing machine. What they got instead was a walking injury report. From the moment he set foot in the Premier League, Keita seemed determined to test the physical limits of the human body in the worst possible way. You know the old saying, there's no part of him that hasn't been injured? Well, Keita went and added a few new parts to that list. Liverpool fans on social media even turned his injury history into comedy material. They made top 5 most ridiculous injuries lists featuring gems like injuring his toe after stepping awkwardly on the turf or missing a game due to a stiff neck caused by the airplane's air conditioning. There was even a rumour he once missed 18 matches after slipping during a routine pitch check before kickoff. Across his Liverpool career, the Guinean midfielder suffered 22 separate injuries in 13 different body regions. In total, he missed 113 matches. And during the rare stretches when he wasn't injured, he still struggled with match fitness. When his contract expired in 2023, he left on a free transfer to Werder Bremen. But even there, he only managed to play 5 matches. Now, 30 years old, Keita's career looks like it's slowly limping toward the finish line. Fitting, given how it's gone so far. Under Mikel Arteta, Arsenal's transfer strategy has leaned heavily toward players who have already proven themselves in the Premier League, some even within the walls of Manchester City. And a big reason behind that shift, the Nicola Pepe experiment. Back in the summer of 2019, Arsenal shelled out €80 million to sign the Ivorian winger, fresh off a blistering season at Lille, where he racked up 22 goals and 11 assists. It looked like a statement signing. Instead, it became a cautionary tale. "The fans judged me based on my price, not my performance," Pepe later said. And honestly, what did he expect? As the most expensive signing in Arsenal's history, the spotlight was always going to burn a little brighter, and it clearly wore him down. He's since admitted that during his time in North London, he seriously considered quitting football altogether. You could practically see the weariness in his face, even in photos. But the price tag wasn't his only problem. At Lille, he thrived in a fast-paced, counter-attacking system. Arsenal, on the other hand, was shifting toward a more patient, possession-based approach. The fit was all wrong. Add to that inconsistent training performances and shaky form on the pitch, and it wasn't long before he fell out of favour with Arteta, then out of the squad entirely. In the end, Pepe left Arsenal for free, From an €80 million investment to a zero-return exit, he became one of the club's biggest transfer flops, and a defining reason why Arsenal now spends big money only on players like Declan Rice, who don't need a crash course in adapting to the English game. After leaving Real Madrid, Gonzalo Higuain exploded in Naples. In the 2015-2016 season, he scored 36 goals in 35 Serie A matches, putting himself firmly among the world's elite number 9s. So, in July 2016, Juventus decided to break the bank, paying €90 million to pry Higuain away from Napoli. And to be fair, the Argentine's Juventus chapter actually started well. He played all 38 league matches and scored 24 goals, proving once again that he was the real deal in front of goal. But with some players, the drop-off from peak form comes suddenly and brutally. And when that happens, you either cut your losses fast or you pay the price. Juventus chose poorly. Higuain never had a reputation as a training enthusiast, and he was always prone to gaining weight. That combination caught up to him quickly. His physical decline was visible, and the stats confirmed it. In the 2017-2018 season, he managed just 16 goals in 35 games. Then came Cristiano Ronaldo, and Higuain was no longer welcome. The following season, he was loaned out, first to Milan, then to Chelsea. Across both stints, he played 40 matches and scored just 13 goals. He returned to Juventus after that, but now firmly second fiddle to Cristiano. He spent most of the season on the bench, and when he did play, he looked like a shadow of his former self, netting just 11 goals in 44 appearances. And this is how a €90 million striker was eventually let go for free. In 2020, Juventus offloaded him to Inter Miami without earning a single cent back. Higuain played 2 more seasons in MLS before finally hanging up his boots. Once one of the most lethal strikers on the planet, reduced to a quiet exit and a list of what-ifs. €127 million. No matter what he does, João Felix's entire career will forever be framed by that number. That monstrous fee, paid when he was just 19, is the lens through which everything about him will be judged. And at this point, it's hard to find a convincing reason to believe he'll ever justify it. Yes, he was a prodigious talent, but that 19-year-old version of Felix, that's still the best version we've seen. He hasn't added much since. You could try blaming Atletico's rigid, defensive playing style, but then how do you explain the fact that he also failed to shine at Chelsea, Milan, or even at Barcelona? The club he once called his childhood dream. The New York Times once described him as football's Rorschach test. You know, the one where people stare at inkblots and say what they see, and the answer really says more about them than the image itself. Atletico, Chelsea, Barcelona, Milan. What did these giant clubs see in João Felix? Better yet, what do you see? Maybe it's time for both João and the clubs chasing him to manage their expectations. Dial it back, lower the stakes. Because yes, he's still gifted, still valuable, but one of the 5 most expensive players in football history? I think we all know the answer to that. Some of these names had talent, some had hype, a few even had both. But in the brutal world of top-level football, none of that matters if you can't deliver when it counts. These transfers weren't just expensive, they were lessons. For clubs, for players, and for fans who believed the headlines. In the end, it's not the price tag that defines a player. It's what they do after the spotlight fades. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.